Yo, what's up guys, Boogle here, and it's time, the video for the top 5 hardest crazed cats in Battle Cats. And just a disclaimer, this is opinion based, so do not take it too seriously. Of course, some cats might be harder to get for others than for myself, so just keep that in mind. But anyways, the top 5 hardest crazed cats in Battle Cats. Now, I was originally gonna keep Crazed Cow at number 5 on this list, but looking more into it, I bumped it down. Crazed Cow is definitely easier than the cat at number 5, and the reasons being is this level requires a little strategy and just a little amount of timing, but that's about it. Everything else is just cat spam and bringing high leveled area attacking units. And Crazed Cow stats are nothing too crazy. It only has 130,000 HP and it only does 2600 damage, and it clocks in at around 7500 damage per second. But the thing is, Crazed Cow does not have area attack in this stage, so it makes it super easy to just staller spam and para stack it out. With level 30 stallers, this level becomes a big joke, and that's the minimum requirement. People usually have higher levels by the time they get to Crazed Cow, and it just makes it super easy. So this is why Crazed Cow is not number 5 on the list, if you are wondering. But the actual number 5 on the list is, of course, it has to be Crazed Dragon. So at the lower part of this list, most of these stages are still pretty easy, and Crazed Dragon being one of the easy stages, or Crazed Lizard. And you probably must be wondering why this is number 5, so I'll be explaining that here. So let's start off with Crazed Dragon or Lizard stats. And he has a lot of HP, that's one thing, at 600,000 HP, and the damage is actually very low, and that's what makes this cat number 5 for a reason. The DPS is only 780 and the damage is 1300. But the thing that people struggle with the most in this stage is, of course, the lizard's range, and that's at 755, which is a huge range. And not only that, but it has area attack. So just imagine, based off its stats alone, you might think this is a super hard stage, and it's not too difficult. That's why it's in at number 5, and it can easily be countered by high health units like Chimera, Wrestling Cat, or long distance units like Hacker Cat. But the thing is that distance and area attack is super deadly and can cause a lot of problems if you cannot stall correctly, and if you don't have high enough level stallers or high enough leveled attackers to take care of the orders that show up in this stage. However, ranking the difficulty of the level by its stats isn't the best way to do it, and I'll explain why here. What is the other thing that makes this stage so damn difficult that it comes in at number 5 out of the other Crazed Cats? Well, the thing is the strategy. The order cycle is very annoying, and it makes it very hard to push in with your titans and get some good damage on the lizards. So you have to make sure you have your perfect titan cycle, so when the orders go down, you're ready to take on the lizards on a one-on-one battle, and the orders are not there. However, if you do not take the orders out quickly enough, the next wave of orders will come and you'll have to deal with those again, and eventually you'll just be caught sitting there just trying to kill the orders over and over again, not dealing any damage to Crazed Lizard. And the thing is, if you do have Hacker Cat, this stage does become a joke, but with decent units and a scarce amount of units, this level does become harder very quickly. And even with Paris, it becomes a little bit difficult if you do not know how to time your cycles for Titan correctly. So that is the main reason why it's at number 5. It requires a lot more strategy than Crazed Cow and can get very tricky if you don't know your timings and enemy cycles correctly. But other than that, it can be cheesed very easily with Chimera and Hacker Cat, so keep that in mind too. And the level requirements are actually very low too, and I actually beat this stage with level 25 cats, but I did have a level 30 wrestling cat to carry through it. So if you could get the cycles down correctly, this stage can become very easy, and that goes for all Crazed Cats. So that is why Crazed Dragon / Lizard is at number 5 on the list. Now moving on to number 4. If you did guess it right, number 4 is Crazed Bird. So let's start off with Crazed Bird's stats. And his health is pretty large, and it comes in at 1.18 million health. And the damage is pretty large too, coming in at 12,000 damage and at around 2,000 damage per second. And that's not the only thing that's deadly about Crazed Bird. The range is 640, close to Dragon's range, and also it does have area attack. So it's actually very similar to Crazed Dragon, but it does do a lot more damage than Crazed Dragon and has a lot more health. Granted, there are 3 Crazed Dragons stacked up, but that doesn't mean it out damages the one Crazed Bird. Now, a big flaw to point out for Crazed Bird is that it actually has a trait. While all the other Crazed Cats do not have traits, Crazed Bird does have a trait, and that is floating. So if you do have Octo, congratulations, you can get yourself Crazed Bird. But keep in mind, even if you do have Octo, it's not gonna be that easy. So what makes Crazed Bird very similar to Crazed Dragon? Well, the stats are pretty different except for the range, but the way the level is designed is very similar to Crazed Dragon, where you have to kind of chip down the bird and you have to chip down Crazed Dragon. You cannot get consistent damage done on these cats without Hacker Cat or long distance units. So just imagine Crazed Dragon, but it requires higher level units because there is a boar in this stage, but the reindeers are the substitute for the otters in this case, and they are a lot harder to deal with than the otters. And with the whole cycle of the reindeers is very similar to the otters. If you don't kill them quick enough, they do start to stack up and they can cost you the whole level. So I guess there's nothing really much to explain. It's very similar to Crazed Dragon, how it's very hard to get consistent damage on Crazed Bird. Crazed Bird's range is very deadly with the area attack. The level requirements for Crazed Bird is a lot higher than Crazed Dragon, and the units, the enemy units in the level are a lot harder to deal with than the units in Crazed Dragon. That alone does put it above Crazed Dragon, and you can cheese this level with Chimera and Octo, but you can also cheese Crazed Dragon, so it doesn't make that much of a difference. So that is why Crazed Bird is at number 4 in the list. Now we're heading on into the top 3, and you might be kind of surprised by this one. And coming in at number 3 is Crazed Gross. Now, if this video was made 3 years ago, Crazed Gross would definitely be number 1 or 2 on this list. But as time goes on, this stage just gets easier and easier with newer units coming, new cat combos coming, and more stuff like that, and it just becomes more and more easier as time goes on, and that goes for other Crazed Cats as well, but I'll explain that more later. But first of all, let's of course hop into Crazed Gross's stats, and its HP comes in at around 120,000 health per Crazed Gross. It's not just one that spawns in this level, so keep that in mind. The damage is also pretty high at 3,990 damage with around 2,500 damage per second. But on top of that, there is a level 3 shockwave. So on top of the already decently high DPS, the level 3 shockwave just makes it even more deadly. Now they kinda did nerf the range for Crazed Gross, and the range only comes in at 100, but this level is still fairly difficult even with that low range. So paired up with the shockwave, the range is about 800. So imagine that, it is almost impossible to stack up units against this Crazed Gross because of the 800 range from shockwaves, and even if you do manage to stack them up, they will all probably most likely die due to the shockwave. Another reason why this is number 3 and not number 2 or 1, it's because of what I mentioned earlier about the whole this stage getting easier as time goes on thing, and that's true. As time did go on, slowly more cat combos released and it became a lot more easier to deal with, and more units released like Octo, like True Form Gacha units, wave blockers, unharmed by wave cats. All these units slowly started to come out, and this stage's difficulty slowly started to drop. And the same thing applies to the other Crazed Cats, but it didn't hit harder than it did for Crazed Gross, because the main difficulty of this level is the constant spawning of the Crazed Gross and those shockwaves. Those shockwaves are very hard to deal with. The only way to deal with them is either wave blockers or using a stack/tank strat. But back 3 or 4 years ago, this definitely was the hardest Crazed Cat stage. Dealing with those waves was merciless, and it was very difficult without True Form Gacha units. But since it is 2019, Crazed Gross is definitely at number 3, and now we are in the top 2. And coming in at number 2 is Crazed Tank, and this might surprise you. Now I know earlier in the video I said that you shouldn't base the difficulty of the level based on the Crazed Cat stats alone, but you just can't ignore how crazy Crazed Tank stats are, no pun intended. But let's take a look at it. So for the HP, the health of Crazed Tank, it is the highest out of all the other Crazed Cats on this list, coming in at a whopping 3.2 million health. But that's not all. Crazed Tank has the highest damage output out of any Crazed Cat on this list, and his damage is coming at a whopping 30.24k damage, 30,240 damage per hit, and his DPS is also the highest on this list, coming in at 13,540 damage per second. Now his range is still pretty decent at 390, and he does of course have area attack. But the thing is, with only one knockback, 3.2 million health, 13k DPS, this dude is a behemoth. Now that isn't the only hard part of Crazed Tank, and I did say you should not base the difficulty off stats alone, but there are enemies accompanying Tank in cycles, and all of the enemies try their very best to let you not build up a stack to stack up against Crazed Tank and take him out. The enemy cycle goes like this. It goes from Gories, Albros, and then the douches, and all of them try their very best to get in your way and try to mess up your stacked cats, and they will not let you build a decent stack unless you've already built a decent stack to handle them quick enough and take them out quick enough before they start pushing through your stallers. And another thing that could add to its difficulty is the length of this level. Crazed Tank with over 3.2 million health, it can take a long time to take him down, and if your stack keeps getting destroyed too, then it's gonna take even longer. I guess you could say the same thing for Crazed Bird, but on Crazed Bird it's a whole different situation. You can't get consistent damage on Crazed Bird, which makes it a very long level, but with Crazed Tank, you can get consistent damage on him with his attack range only being 390. You can stack up dragons and Bahamut, Ubers, lots of cats can be stacked up against him. But even so, it still takes quite a long time, and once again, if this video was made 3 years ago, I would have put Crazed Gross above Crazed Tank. But let's finally hop into an honorable mention before we get into the number 1 spot, and I'm sure you already know what comes in at number 1. Now, Crazed Monaco would be number 1 on this list, but I don't count it because it did come out way after all the Crazed Cats, but I'll leave it in as an honorable mention, and it definitely is the hardest Crazed Cat stage. With the updated stage difficulty alone, it makes it a very difficult stage, but there's also the stats of Crazed Monaco, which is pretty insane too, at 2.4 million health and 60k damage. Also has a level 5 shockwave and multi-hit, and the shockwave activates on the 3rd hit, but on top of that it has a 50% chance to crit, so crit shockwaves and it's a GG. So the true fact is that Crazed Monaco is definitely the hardest Crazed Cat stage out of all of them, but like I said earlier, I do not count it because it did come out way after, and it also is meant to be taken on way later in the game as well. Now it's time for the top hardest Crazed Cat, number 1 on the list, and if you know about it, you know about it, and I'm sure you do, and in at number 1 is of course Crazed Axe. And here it is, the dreaded Crazed Axe. And of course, first of all, let's hop into his stats. Now, Crazed Axe has the 2nd highest health and DPS on this list. Crazed Axe health comes in at a whopping 2.2 million health, and his damage is 4,200, and the damage per second is of course the 2nd highest out of this list, coming at a close second, close to Crazed Cow at 7,875. He also has a range of 360, and he does have area attack, but that's not all. He has a freeze ability, and it's a 50% chance, and with that fast attack rate, it's basically a guaranteed freeze. Now you must be wondering,
hold up, the stats are lower than Crazed Tank. Why is Crazed Axe number 1?
Well, the reason Crazed Axe is above Crazed Tank is not because of the stats. Crazed Tank is definitely more difficult in stats and is probably a lot harder to deal with than Crazed Axe one-on-one, but the whole thing here is the damn shy boys in this level. The level of Crazed Axe is so damn relentless with the shy boys. There is one coming out almost every second, and these are no ordinary shy boys. They are very boosted and they can become very annoying. And of course, in the beginning of the level, if you do not use a rich cat, Axe spawns in right away. It's not spawn on base hit, and you'll be pushed by the shy boys very early, and if you don't build up a stack quick enough, you're pretty much dead. So it's the same thing as Crazed Cow, but with a lot more cat spam, a lot higher level requirements, with a restless level of constant shy boys and Crazed Axe freeze procs. And this is the main reason why Crazed Axe is number 1 on the list, due to the level difficulty. And once again, if Crazed Monaco was a part of the list, it would have been number 1 because of the level difficulty and also because of how crazy Monaco is. But other than that, it's pretty easy. If you have Apple Cat or anti-raid units that are fairly well, you can pretty much breeze with this level, but if you don't, you're gonna have to struggle a lot. And that was it. That was my top 5 list for the hardest Crazed Cats in Battle Cats. Let me guys know in the comments below what your top 5 is, and give some points with it too. Don't just list the top 5 hardest in your opinion. I want some points with it just to see. I'm curious to see how difficult these craze stages are for different people. And let me know if you agreed with this list or if you didn't, and comment why also down below. And let me also know if you guys want more of these top 5 type of videos. I mean, this is probably the longest video I'll make, and it's coming in at around 20 minutes. But let me know if you do want more of these top 5 videos, and drop a like if you did enjoy this video and you made it to the end here. Subscribe if you're new, join the hashtag Boogle gang. We're coming up on 6K and maybe something at 6K, so keep an eye out. But that was it for this video, guys. I hope you guys did enjoy. It's been John Boogle, and see ya.